Hey, this is Fawn, and I want to walk you through this animation rig that I set up, and I'm really happy with the response that it got. So thank you for all the positive feedback. I get a lot of questions asking like, how does it work? And I think a lot of people think that it's actually being like driven by sound, and that's not the case. So I'm gonna walk you through how this works, but this is maybe my fifth time trying to record this tutorial. It's been like 40 minutes long, an hour and 16 minutes long. I'm going to make this very short and simple. I'm going to explain just the basic concepts that this is doing. And if you're interested in seeing like a full stream where I'm going through bit by bit how to do this, let me know. I am going to publish a remixable version of this rig, but just know that I'm going to update this. This rig is in its infancy. We're going to add more face controls. I'm going to add more body controls too. And so I want to update this, and I don't want people to get too comfortable using this rig only for me to update it and make some changes. So you're welcome to remix it for now, but just know that I'm probably going to update this asset in the future, and it's going to dramatically expand. So without further ado, this sculpt was sculpted by bsimpler and remixed by Steve Big Guns and Allison A. Wilson, Twinny. And so that's what I'm using here. I remixed their version of Paranorman here. So let's jump into the rig. Oh, whoops, didn't mean to do that. Keep in mind that I have named all of my gadgets, and I've also named all of my sculpts to make this a lot easier. So here we've got our eyelid controls, and we'll keep those right there. And you'll see that it says eyelids EQ. It's not in the screen. Eyelids EQ, so that means that we need to go into the EQ tab, and we've got our eyelids controls. Over here we've got our brows. These are in the effects, and it's being driven by that little guy there. Oh. And then we've got our look controls, also being driven by the effects graph. Oh, come on. Come on, let me do it. There we go. So how is this actually working? Well, for starters, the gadget that we're using is called a Sound Gadget. You can access this through modes, sound, and then we're going to search for a sound, and we'll search for an instrument. We'll search for, I like using Great White Noise, even though I didn't use it for this. And in order to get these graphs, just open its tweak menu, and now you've got access to all of these cool graphs. I want to use this for like the eyes. But you'll notice that as I'm moving things around, I'm actually getting a lot of feedback. You can't really help it here on the effects, but it does help if you turn the volume all the way down, because we're not actually interested in this sound effect. We just want to use the graphs that it gives us. And turning its power on might also be helpful. We do have to put up with all this clicking noise, but it's a small price to pay. Let's exit out of sound mode, and let's take a look at how this works from the perspective of the eye animations and parameters. So let's look at our wires here. All we're doing is taking the X and Y coordinates of this graph, running them through a signal manipulator to give us a value between 0 and 1, because by default this is -1 to 1 and -1 to 1, but we want it to be 0 to 1. Why do we want 0 to 1? Because here, our action recorder only understands 0 at the beginning of the timeline and 1 at the end of the timeline. And anything in between 0 and 1 is in between there. In between the keyframes that we're animating with. So all we have is just a keyframe that has the eyes look to the left, and a keyframe that has the eyes look to the right. And we're using the graph to control where in that blend we are. But since we're dealing with an x-axis and a y-axis, we can set a timeline for each axis. So left and right moves left and right here, and up and down moves up and down here. We can even use this same action recorder to animate other things. It doesn't need to just be this, but I'm trying to just make it very simple. That's how all of these work. If we open up the microchip for the eyelids, for example, we've got the same exact thing. There's our top eyelid. The only difference here for the eyelids is that it also has a keyframe that is activating all of the lids to close and to create a blink, and that's done by this moving to the right like that. Our eyelids are only moving up and down, so that leaves our x-axis open for a cool expression like that. So that's basically how it works. But now let's open up these graphs and let's look at how this is actually being animated. Here's our action recorder that's actually driving the animation that we're seeing play. And if I open it up, you can see that this is actually just controlling the graphs. Here, let's go to our EQ there, sound effects. It's just animating the graphs. Now, what that allows us to do is make this animation transferable to a puppet with the same rig, with the same extremes rigged. So let's do that. I'm sure that this has been going on for like 10 minutes. Oh, I'm only at 7 minutes and 31 seconds. That's awesome. Okay. So let's apply this same animation to a different puppet. Now, a few things about your puppet. It does help if you have things named and name it and then put in parentheses what character that belongs to, because your action recorder might contain like a ton of different characters. Not a ton, but you know what I mean. We've even got the brows named, and if we scope in even further, I've got this individual brow named. This is important. It's going to help us keep our animation organized and all of our action recorders organized. It's going to make it clear which one each thing is for. And then we don't have to like label everything after the fact if we just go in and label everything while we're working on it. The other thing that you want to make sure is that every individual sculpt that makes up your animation, so I'll go into the sculpt properties, go into physical properties here. Movable can be on or off, but for certain puppets, it's best to just leave it however it was. I'm leaving it off for this case. And then collidable. Make sure that collidable is off. I don't know. I think that people want to turn collision on because they want their puppets to interact with physics objects, but it's going to make it so much more difficult to animate, even impossible to animate, because you're going to get a lot of like glitchy effects. And you will get a lot of glitchy effects that will break your animation if that isn't done. We also want to make sure that we've got our eyes and our eyelids connected to connectors. Let's turn on X-ray mode. You'll see here on this Norman sculpt, here I'll hide everything else, that we've got our eyes here and they're connected to a ball joint that helps them move, but not move like away. We're just rotating it the way that it needs to, and same with the eye. And you'll notice it's not even perfect, like they're not perfectly aligned, but they're good enough. I'm gonna undo some of that, and let's bring in our new puppet that we're going to animate. Now again, if you'd like to see a stream where I do this in more detail, let me know. We're going to use Restless Bulwark's puppet here that I just love. I love this puppet so much. I love their art style. That was that was a little inappropriate. Okay, let's jump in here. And you don't have to do this, but for the purposes of this tutorial, I don't want this health bar. I don't want these like look following animations. And we've even got some automatic like facial animations too, which is great. But I want to connect it to this rig so that we can get some really expressive stuff. So I'm going to scope in here. Well, actually, let's start with the puppet settings. Chill, chill. Turn off auto jump, auto look, turn off procedural animation for now. We can always turn this back on. And let's go in here into the puppet logic. And just for the simplicity of this, we're going to pretend that she's a blank slate. Okay? We'll keep all this stuff on, but I am going to make it smaller. Okay, so now let's scope in and let's see what we're working with here. Can't select that eyelid yet. Okay, so we've got an eyelid that moves freely, so we've got to joint that down. Our eyeballs seem like they're attached to joints. I can't move those freely. Let's undo some of our movement. And can we move this bottom eyelid up? What's going on? No, there's no bottom eyelid. And that's okay. We'll just use this without a bottom eyelid. Okay? So let's get to work here. Let's first start with just adjusting these eyes. I'll go into my guides. Oh, I was already there. X-ray mode and connectors on. And we can see that for the eyes, that joint is set all the way back there when we really want that to be in the center of that eyeball. How am I able to see the eyeball? I'm literally just phasing into her. Wall hacks. And let's also turn the limits off. You can leave your limits on, but I find that they might be too limiting. And where that blue thing is positioned doesn't really matter a whole lot, but I find that it helps if we just do the right thing, make it easier on ourselves. We can also see that this eyeball is perfectly aligned with this eyelid while this one isn't. So I'm just gonna reposition, oh, I wanna reposition connectors, but let's pause time. And that makes me think that maybe some of our physics is a little fucked up. So let's make sure that these are not collidable. Nope, that looks good. That looks good. Okay, I'm gonna assume that all the rest are good too. Okay, now we can move the eyes left and right just fine and up and down, and it looks natural. Oh, whoops, didn't mean to move that. Sometimes it helps to turn X-ray mode off. Okay, let's reset everything, and now we'll connect the eyelids in the same way. X-ray mode might be a little bit confusing for folks. I do not blame you at all. It can be confusing for me too. It can give me a headache, especially here in VR. And I think we're going to want to position this guy right there so that we've just got a nice natural close. Oh, whoops. Don't want to move that. That was perfect. We want to think about like where this, like if this eyelid were a ball, where would the center of that ball be? I think like right there. Ooh, nope. That's not it. Ooh, that's almost perfect. I think we need to just make it a little higher or something. Gosh darn it, this X-ray mode, we have to turn it off. That's perfect. Okay, great. Dang it, but I need to reset these positions. Okay, let's just try to remember where that was, because I need to put that back in place. I think it was like right there. Perfect. Okay, now we're rigged. That's all we needed to do to prepare the face. If we had bottom eyelids, we would want to do those in the same exact way, just making sure that they can open and close naturally. So now let's scope all the way out, and we'll just copy the rig. We'll just clone it. And since we don't need to see the connectors, I'll just turn that off. We'll open the animation rig. Whoa, that's big. Save that position. Open our face controls here. Okay, I want EQ. Effects are open there, and effects are open there. I didn't realize that I could just save which tab it was open if I click that. That's really helpful. Dang it. Okay. Let's move everything back in place again. Dang it. Okay. Let's start with the eyelids since they're up here at the top. Since we don't have bottom eyelids, we can honestly just delete these, or we can just disconnect them, but make sure that Norman's not being animated with them anymore. We're copying this directly from Norman, so we got to delete his animations. Now let's go into that top left lid. And we can use Norman's animations as a guide, or we can just delete these. But this is going to move us from the bottom of the eyelid being closed to it being wide open. Okay, so let's start here at wide open because it's already in open position. There we go. And we can go ahead and get our other timeline open. And let's just drag these. Let's make this a little bit easier on ourselves. Okay, so that one's open. And now let's make it closed. Oops, back up just a bit. Okay. And we'll delete Norman. There we go. It rotates just a bit. Maybe we want it to come just straight down instead of rotating like that. Much better. Okay. Now let's go over here and do the same thing, but to the right. Oh, oops, we were already scoped in. So let's go to the start. And that's good. And now closed. And we'll delete Norman. And we're done. Now, when we go to eyelids, the bottom eyelids won't have any effect. Oh, let's turn off the animation so it stops locking to the animation. The bottom eyelids have no effect, but these look good. And they look nice and even too. Okay, now let's animate the blink. And I'll just add a new keyframe here and delete the old one for Norman. And I'll connect A there for the y-axis. One there, and one there. Perfect. Okay, now when we move that to the right, we blink with all of them. It's not perfect, We could tweak it a little bit to make it perfect, but it's good enough for now. Now let's open up the brows, and we'll do left-right brow raise and up-down brow raise. These are the two that we want to edit. Let's start with left-right. I'll just delete Norman's. This is super easy to animate. Let's scope into the brows. Now we've got individual highlights for each one. And we'll just tag them both first, move it back to the original position, tag them both again. So at the start, we want this to be left-right, this to be neutral, and this to be, this to be left-up, this to be neutral, and this to be the right brow up. So let's start with left-up. And I'm going to use this little wire as a guide visually for myself. Sometimes I raise them at the wrong. I raise them like too high or not high enough. Now we'll move over here to the right. Oh shoot, it changed. Okay, we'll use the little dot. Perfect. But now neutral is going to be a little higher than the original neutral position. So we can either lower this down like so that neutral is a little bit lower. Or we can make some other changes to accommodate, but there we go. That's great. Now let's do up-down brow. I'll delete Norman's animations. Let's animate them both. And animate them both again. And I'll move them down together. And now I'm just going to rotate them right here on this point. Okay, now here at the end, so that's down here at 0, and then up at 1 at the highest point. I'm gonna move it. Let's select them both. Let's move them all the way up. Let's make it super dramatic. And then, oh, whoops. Then we'll rotate down just slightly. Ooh, I like that look actually. Well, let's review. That's angry. This will be our default. That's concerned. And now, there we have it. Our brows are set up. Our eyelids are set up, even though it's kind of tricky to get them. Let's do one there and one like that. This. Oh, we've got our eyes. I forgot our eyes. Eyes are easy. Let's set our eyes to left and right. Before we do this, let's just adjust this. Open our eyes wide so that it's easier for us to see. Okay, now we need our eyes starting at the left. Let's delete Norman. And eyes to the right. Done. Up and down. We'll start with down. Because we're at 0, we're at the bottom of the graph. And we'll go up. Oh, whoops. Just ignore that our eyes are in the back of her skull. That's perfectly fine. because we've got some amplification turned on these. That we did. We got some on that one. We need some on this guy. Okay. Now, our look animation is complete. Now we could fix that slight rotation that we're seeing there. And it looks like we need to probably keyframe those a little bit. But now, we can get these really nice, expressive animations on our face that we have complete control over. And if we turn back on our action recorder, you can see that the animation transferred over. So, that's all there is to it. Remember, since this action recorder is just animating the graphs, we're just moving that graph data over to a new puppet. So you can set up a puppet with all of the animations that you want, and then move that over to a different puppet that's rigged the same exact way. All you have to do is just plug in the right the right graphs. So that's it. I hope that this video isn't too long. Let's say I'm probably at 20 minutes, at 26. Hey, it's better than 40. So if you'd like to see a stream that's going through step by step how we do this, how I name, the models, I'm not sure how many people would actually be into that, but I am going to start streaming some Dreams content soon, reviewing other people's creations, checking out some cool games. So leave a comment if you have a game that I should check out, or a model, or some art. I love looking at people's characters. It's my favorite thing to do here. There's so much amazing stuff in Dreams, and I hate that I haven't been making content for the past few years. So I'll probably start streaming either later this week or next week, but leave a comment and let me know what you'd like to see, or if I should check out your stuff. Okay, bye.